Ray, thanks so much for making the time.
Well, I'm really glad to be here. It's always fun to talk about these things.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into really whatever direction the conversation takes us. But for me, when I first heard about you through a viral video that came out from the Cut, I believe, where they brought you into a group of strangers and you had to guess their zodiac sign. I mean, it's a fascinating project and experiment, I guess. And you didn't really know much or anything about them beforehand, right? There wasn't like this before off film. Never met them.
Didn't really know what I was there to do until they told me the rules. And it said, there's one rule. You can ask them anything you want, except your birthday.
Right.
So then I caught on. So, this is going to be fun. I thought I was lucky to get 4 out of 12.
Well, I mean, these things are almost virtually impossible, it seems.
There's so many factors, 10 planets, a lot of the moon will go into some sort of part of how you look. Same with the sun, same with the rising. So there was a 30% chance that I could get it wrong, and a 60% chance, meaning the other way around, 30% would get it right, 60% would get it wrong.
Right.
So what I did is what I always did. When I was first really learning astrology, I was one of these little coffee house guys, hanging out in a coffee house and talking this, trash talk about astrology and all that in the midst of a situation like the Vietnam War and everything else. And people, what's wrong with you? That's fantasy. We got to deal with the politics of it all. I said, well, it might help to know your enemy. And they said, yeah. I said, well, you're looking at it. You're the enemy. You're your own enemy. All of this. And they said, you? What do you mean you? I said, well, your head is too small. Your identity doesn't stop with the edges of your skin. If you had been born 2,000, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20,000 years ago, it would have been common sense for you to recognize the environment is as much you as that body that you're in.
Right.
You guys have forgotten the whole thing. So the political reality is figure out who you are, because otherwise, you're just a blind man in an orgy. Just feeling your way around.
It's a good way to put it. Well, I mean, I was fascinated just around this idea of astrology. First off, I don't know a lot about astrology. I was born Catholic and then turned into Christian, and then now I'm more agnostic, but just more on the religious sense. But astrology is something that I've never really delved into, which is why some of the questions that I might ask you might be quite off topic, or it just may not seem completely even relevant. So just giving you some heads up here, but I was just excited to pick your brain, and particularly just understanding the people that have also used astrology to get to the top of their fields. You've got Reagan, Roosevelt, Einstein. There's a lovely quote by JP Morgan who says that millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. And it just was fascinating to me that all of these high figures were, able to really get value out of astrology. Whereas for me, it's just something I haven't even heard of in the past. And from what I understand, 30% of Americans believe in astrology. And I'm curious to know, I guess, just right off the bat, would love to know, how did you get into astrology? What was the origin story there?
My originating story and how I got into astrology.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting story. I'll tell you exactly how it came about. I was in the military and reached a point where I was released. And I ended up, after a few little starts and stops, I ended up in Berkeley, California.
Yeah.
And I used to frequent this one coffee house. And I met this guy there who told me stuff about myself that he had no right knowing. So I confronted him. I said, look, man, what are you, CIA? I mean, you've been following me? Did you finally catch up? He laughed. And I said, well, what is this business of the way you talk to me like, like we've known each other for centuries and you know too much about me. What's the deal? And he said, well, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. So that piqued my curiosity. I said, well, come on. Go ahead. Tell me. Try me. See if I can do it. He tells me, well, I use astrology. I said, what? Astrology? The hell has that got to do with anything? Look, I just got out of, 10 years of the government pushing me around, looking for brown people to kill and everything. I was sick of it. I don't like that. I didn't like that at all. So I got out, and now you're telling me that the balls of gas and rocks in the sky are going to tell me how to live my life and what to do and curse me if I don't do it right, help me if I do it wrong, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, he said, well, I told you wouldn't believe it. I said, yeah. Well, the kicker is that his guy is sitting at the coffee table is surrounded by women who were just hanging on every word he said. I said, no, but, just macho out of military. Said, wait a minute. Wait. It's an angle here. What's that? Well, I decided, okay, I was going to angle on over to the table next time I came into the coffee house if he was there. Sure enough, he was. So I just sort of walked up and said, hey, man, how you doing? He said, oh, cool. Hey, have a seat. Oh, there it was. So it was astrology talk. And I realized I don't know anything about this. So how am I going to get with these chicks if I don't know the language? I said, hey, can you give me some idea what books to read and so forth? He says, oh, you're being converted, are you? I said, well, no, not exactly, but, it's really intriguing that you're able to do this, and I would like to be able to do it too, so why don't you do that? So he gave me a pretty long list of books to read, and I took a year to read them. And at the end of that year, I said, okay, I read them. He says, cool. I'm going to teach a class tomorrow night. You want to come? I said, sure. So I thought I was going to be a student. He put me in as his apprentice. He said, here's Ray, He's new to this whole thing, just like you are, but he's read more books than you probably will do the rest of your life. So I know he's committed. Whoa. So it started out like that. And after a couple of years, we were teaching classes together all over the San Francisco Bay Area. And I got to meet people like Dane Rudhyar, the father of humanistic astrology, person-centered astrology, transpersonal astrology, and all of that. And I also was working in the media as a radio host on about 3 or 4 different radio stations in the Bay Area. They don't need to give you the call letters, but the idea was there was 4 or 5 stations, and I got to interview a lot, and I started focusing more and more on the human potential and all of that business that was beginning to flow into the media airwaves about higher consciousness and spirituality and the new age and all of that kind of stuff. So I was lapping it up like crazy, and I got better and better and better at it.
So when you first started, sorry to interrupt you, Ray. I'm curious to know about this point, because when you first mentioned when you got to the coffee shop, obviously the motivation was external, right? It was getting chicks. At what point for you was it?
No. The motivation, initial motivation to go to the coffee house to have coffee.
Right, right. But you got into it when you saw this guy who was an astrologist hanging around all these women.
Well, yeah, it happened a little earlier when he asked me these questions about
Got it.
what he knew about me. But anyway, you have the idea. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And at what point was it for you when you started to go in and study on your own and really get into it? At what point, what was the tipping point for you to say, wow, this is something that's going to be my life's work? Was it a book? Was it a certain knowledge that you gathered?
No, it was the effect of the present moment in terms of the transiting, passing planets as they had some angular kind of relationship to where the sky was when I was born.
Mm.
And so transits will begin to work their way into your feelings and your thought process. You have things like, well, I was born Uranus, was in Pluto, was in Taurus.
Yeah.
And of course, that's where it is now. And it's an 84-year cycle. But back then, it was, I think, somewhere around, I don't know, maybe Leo, Virgo, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so Uranus is an energy field that corresponds to the idea of transformation. So when I think it went over some planet, I can't remember exactly what, but these kinds of things were happening right and left. And I could not explain it in any other way. And even if I had been able to, why would the astrology be able to explain it?
Yeah.
I had this idea that they were up there and I was down here. And so I had to overcome, and this was a tipping point, overcome my subservience to materialism.
Mm. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, materialism creates this space, let's say, between me and Saturn in the sky. Well, the place that space is full. It's full of electromagnetic energy, and all of the planets are interwoven electromagnetically, having effect on each other, because the sun is the solar system. It's 99.86% of the mass of the solar system. And the planets, 0.14%, tiny little things, genes. The sun has organs, and the earth is the womb organ of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So I began to see that. That was a tipping point. I said, oh. So then I was able to, they say you were born Catholic, right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you weren't born Catholic. You were born into a Catholic environment. And for the first 7 years of your life, they arranged an identity for you called the ego, which felt guilty if they didn't do the Catholic stuff. Wasn't guilty of anything, but so I don't know. I'm just not really rambling, but talking a lot. I gave you an answer that you're looking for.
Well, I mean, I want to get people on the same page, right? Because 30% of Americans believe in astrology, yet you've got 3% or even less of atheists that believe in astrology. So obviously there are people that are skeptical, just like you were when you first got started.
Sure.
And my understanding is that I think it can be sometimes categorized into the world of like fortune tellers. And in many ways, I just don't think people understand it. I certainly don't understand it. And I think in general, humans are very resistant to things that we can't make sense of or control. And in some ways, like it can't really be falsified, right? Might be good for us to start talking a little bit about what you think is the biggest misconception that most people have about astrology or what astrologists do?
I think in terms of a person who isn't an astrologer or is confronted with the question, do you believe in astrology?
Yeah.
The misconception that I see happening all the time is that they see astrology as something that is attempting to tell them their fate,
Yeah.
where they're going to end up, whether they're going to suffer or whether they're going to be successful, have a happy married life. So, a lot of that comes out of Vedic astrology.
Beta what?
Out of Vedic.
Vedic. Okay.
Vedic, Jyotish, sidereal. So that's the biggest misconception, that it has something to do with fate. It is more looking in the mirror and getting a clear understanding of what you're made of. And the difference that people find, I guess, difficult at first is that they're more to you than the body that you're in. At the time, that you take your first breath, that body that does that isn't you. What comes in with your first breath, because they slap, and the body goes, shock, and so forth, brings air, it's in the room, that connects the body to all the air that's cradling the earth. Did you know that oxygen molecules and atoms can be found 390,000 miles above the earth in all directions, beyond the orbit of the moon? So that's telling you that the earth is bathed in life-giving substances, gases, oxygen, nitrogen, and a few others that I don't know how to pronounce.
Me neither.
Yeah. So the idea is that the solar system is you, and it transmutes into living in that body, trying to hook up with the biological DNA. The solar system becomes your spiritual DNA. So I don't know any more I can say about the sticking point. It's just a lot of people really are afraid that if they start believing it, then they're gonna, I don't know, they're just afraid. Most people are afraid to really understand themselves.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect could be that they just don't have a grasp of the origins or even the practicalities of astrology and what astrologists do when they're reading people. And just to clarify those points, it might be helpful if you can just give an overview of what exactly it is that astrologists are looking for and what they do when they're going through the process of reading someone. Just a high level overview for people that may just not be familiar with the concept of astrology.
Well, it has to be pretty general, because what an astrologer will do depends upon the moment that the reading begins, because that's an originating moment. So the astrologer is going to look at the sky than it is at that moment. The person walks in the door for the reading, look at your clock, create a chart for that moment, so you understand what that moment is, the potential for that moment.
What do you mean by moment? You're talking about the constellation of the planets?
The very moment that the person knocks on the door and I open it. What time is it? Take note. Draw an astrology chart for that moment. The moment that the person begins showing initiative that they want this reading. There's all kinds of ways of showing initiative. They can mail me a check. They can come to meet me in a supermarket. or whatever, but they commit to it. And then when they actually arrive to do it, then that moment contains information that I need to know about what they're bringing with it. The moment brings its own energy, just like the wind, can move things around because it's energy that moves. So time is an energy that moves. So the moment someone comes in, the quality of that moment has to be integrated, at least in your understanding, how to handle what you're going to do with this person.
If I was to go in with a reading for you right now, just hypothetically, at this moment, this is recorded and we're on a live call. Obviously, it's virtual. As much as I would love to do this in person, what would you as an astrologist be looking for when you're talking about in the moment? So let's say at this time, it's for me, it's for you, it's 11:28 a.m. What exactly would you be looking for at this present time as we're going through this reading?
I guess the idea is that every moment has a potential that can be developed.
Okay.
But you have to know the potential. And the moment contains the potential if you can read it astrologically. So I don't know what is rising right now. I don't know. I'd have to interrupt the whole thing and draw a chart for 11:29 a.m. But that wouldn't help because we started this thing at 11.
Yeah.
And you didn't actually start with me until 11:04.
Right.
So if you were coming for a reading, I would draw up a chart for 11:04 a.m. here in Seattle. And whatever the rising sign is telling me that the path that we're on right now has this kind of quality to it. And so we should adhere to that if at all possible. And as a matter of fact, whether you adhere to it or not, you are adhering to it. It is the nature of what is happening. It's a description of what is happening. It isn't something that you have to do or not. But, if you want to go on a date with somebody, wouldn't it be amazing if you could look at their astrological configuration and realize, oh God, this has got potential for a serial killer. I better not. That's a joke, of course.
Of course, yes.
You don't see that in a person.
Yeah.
You see the danger for the possibility, but it's there as a possibility to be avoided.
And you're saying because you're talking about 11:04 specifically as the specific time when you want to be creating a chart in that case. So if we started at 11:02, you're saying that would have been a completely different reading experience because of the fact that it started at
I wouldn't say completely different, but it would be different. The way that the horizon works is that it moves. The horizon will move 1 degree every 4 minutes.
1 degree every 4 minutes. Okay.
So after 15, 20 minutes, you may actually have a different sign. And a rising is just the gateway to describe the quality of what you're experiencing. It just describes the moment is moving in this direction to deal with this potential. That moment that I do the chart for is the moment they walked in. There's above the horizon, which is the objective reality that is out there for both of us, the client and myself. And there's a subjective side of it. It's below the horizon, which is a clue to what's going on in each of us, and what's my role and what his or her role here. And some people come just for a tune-up.
Yeah.
Some people come to figure out what's wrong. Why are they depressed? What is they're lost? they're confused, or they want to come in and they have this idiotic idea that I can tell them how to make $1 million.
Right.
So that moment that I'm talking about, they walk in, the potential of that moment has to be understood and utilized for the greatest success in being able to penetrate a person's lack of understanding of astrology, because we're brought up in a materialistic way. We still describe the distance from, one thing to another, from here to the center of the galaxy, in miles or parsecs. It's better to measure it in terms of consciousness. Are you conscious of you being in the galaxy? Oh, you're intellectually, yeah. But are you conscious of that on a daily basis, walking down the street? Standing on the earth, which might very well be just the womb of the sun, where the sun creates itself.
Yeah. So
consciousness is what is I'm after when I do the moment a person starts a chart. I know where everything is in relationship to their chart and my chart. So I know what's expected, what is needed, what's the best way to talk with this person.
Yeah, this is such an interesting conversation, because I am sure you can sense this, is the questions that I'm trying to ask are very logically broken down, and I'm trying to intellectualize it as much as possible, mainly for, not just for myself, but also mainly for the people that are listening, for them to really understand something that may not be something they've even really experienced, or maybe something they haven't delved into. But it doesn't seem like that's how it should be asked. It's almost one of those things that you kind of have to experience, and maybe it's not something that you can really break down using the limitations of the English language, and because you're talking about a very complex and fluid concept that is really hard to break down, right? Just using the limitations of what we have. And obviously you're doing a great job so far. And I'm trying to ask you the best questions possible in that sense. But to get that grasp for me, just to clarify some of those points, if I was to come to and ask you for a reading, and I asked you a question, something not like, can you make $1 billion or not? The question would be more, let's say, who is the right type of partner for me to feel, let's say, the most love, right? And you're saying that the answer could change depending on what time or what setting we came into the conversation.
Well, you're talking change as though it would have been one way, and so it isn't that way, it's this way. You see, that's materialistic.
Okay.
It is what it is at the moment that it is what it is. And we're looking for what it is at the moment that it is, whatever it is, and try to work with that. Align the consciousness with the cosmic reality. Now, to use the word cosmic for most people is to get into the woohoo end of things. And that's because of the materialist view that humanity is laboring under for centuries. 1926, 5, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. The whole reality of materialism was destroyed.
1920s.
And
okay.
It takes a long time for the new reality to actually filter into the everyday activities and consciousness and the way we build buildings and how we do everything.
Yeah.
So quantum physics blew materialism out of the water. An atom is 99.9999999999999. I feel like that guy, the pizza guy, 99 when he was running for office. Anyway, it's 99.9999% empty space.
Mm-hmm.
And what is in it is energy. So science is telling us that we have a false image of the reality that we are in and a part of. We have a mechanistic view of the world, push-pull.
Mm-hmm.
The major medical model sees the body as a machine. Push this, pull that. And yet, we know from quantum physics that everything is energy, and that the business of matter is a interpretation of the mind.
Right.
Your eyes see what they see, but they don't really see what they see. They see light bouncing off of different energy fields,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
electromagnetic energy fields. That's you.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you there.
That's a pretty tall order to ask somebody who is working on Wall Street, and the whole idea is the bottom line.
That's right. That's right.
Everything else is meaningless unless the bottom line increases in its value.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a result of materialistic thinking.
And what are the origins? I mean, who maybe that's the wrong question, but
there is no.
That's right. That's right. Let me ask you, like, what are, because I know there's different types of astrology, right? There's the Chinese, the Western, the Vedic, the Mayans, and there's all different kinds. What was the origin astrology theme that kind of spawned that eventually divided into multiple different kinds, like the Chinese, the Western, the Vedic, and so forth?
Well,
yeah.
Do you ever go camping?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever go camping out where the sky was just filled with the light of a billion stars?
Yeah.
That's where it started. Right. People just laying there like that. Wow, look at that. And then, wait a minute, I'm getting interested in this, so I'm going to measure how far that thing moved since yesterday. And it just builds up over time. Interactions with human beings about, hey, and then becomes a pseudoscience. And then it becomes a kind of power that the royalty and the leaders and the autocrats decide, oh, I want heaven on my side. So they say, I want you to tell me what the stars have in store for me.
Yeah.
That astrologer doesn't want to get. So astrology starts telling the king, all these wonderful things about how he's going to be successful and that. And if he starts getting a little weird, the astrologer has a way of running to another country or something else. But astrology was used for the survival of the astrologer.
Right.
And that's the origin of the Christian biblical admonition about astrologers are charlatans. That's all. And it's unfortunate because, it eliminates a whole area of your consciousness from having any interaction with anyone. Because it's woo-hoo, it's black magic, it's charlatan, it's this and that. It's much more attractive to get training as a banker, or it's much more attractive to become a doctor or a nurse or an attorney or this or that. Because, all those things are derived out of the Weltanschauung, the view of the world. And as long as we see the world out there and we have to have an interaction with it, here we are. What we've done as a species is take the earth as a host and, like a virus, start to kill it. So this is where we are. And I'm pivoting, but why? What astrology is telling me, I was looking at, we have lost our way.
And you don't think it was like that before? You think it's a recent? You think it's a recent moment that we're having in society that we've lost our way?
Well, I mean, we have. They're not recent. It's been going on for centuries. There was a comet that went by in 2020, discovered through a NASA device or probe called Neowise. Interesting name, New Wisdom. But after calculating the orbit of the thing, they discovered it had an orbit of 6,800 years. That means 6,800 years ago, it was right where it was in 2020, coming around the sun. Astrology is about cycles, beginning, middle, and end. And a comet has a cycle. And everything that happened since the comet was last here, 6,800 years ago, that was the Neolithic age, give or take half a century or two. Human beings were nomadic, small groups, hunting around for food. And eventually, they go in circles, just like you have your favorite place to go every day or once a month, or on Mondays, you got to, So the habitual reality is they get back to places they'd been before. And they noticed that some of the food droppings that they had left had deposited seeds, like watermelon seeds, and watermelons were growing, or something, food was growing.
Yeah.
Blew their mind. Civilization requires agriculture. Agriculture began there with the nomads when they discovered that they could plant a seed and grow something. They could grow more food than they needed as a group, and then it could use food to exchange. I'll give you blah, blah, blah for that gold.
Yeah.
So civilization began because agriculture began. And that led all the way over time, centuries, thousands of years, to the Industrial Revolution, which made it possible for more and more people to be born. The population of the planet grew. It's 9 billion now. And Industrial Revolution made it possible to become capitalist. And capitalism brought you climate change, because capitalism bottom line is money.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, money doesn't even exist. It's just a social compact. I will agree that that's a $5 bill if you agree that's a $5 bill. Now, between you and I, the moment I talk about that $5 bill today is only worth $4.58, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So the moment is different, even though the subject is the same, $5 bill. So the moment matters because it changes the quality and character of what you're seeing into what it really is. I can't go out and buy the same amount of products with that $5 bill today than I could 10 years ago. So what's the name of that? It's what you believe.
You mean inflation?
It's a social contract.
Mm-hmm.
So astrology shows you those social contracts because there's so much of astrological lingo that goes into describing the inner workings of the way you think and the way you evaluate. So as long as we're unconsciously engaged in materialist thinking and acting, astrology is going to seem like a woohoo out there thing.
Well, I mean, I feel like overall the popularity of astrology has increased, and there's almost seems this correlation between the uncertainty of events that are happening around the world with how much people are talking about astrology and horoscopes. Why do you think that is?
You just said why.
People want certainty.
People are worried. They're uncertain about a lot of things. And this big elephant in the room, climate change, it hits them like a sledgehammer. What can I do? So then you realize you're in a situation where you have no power. You've given it all away to the materialists, mm-hmm. who can't come up with an agreement about anything without going through 1,000 different iterations of failures and so forth. So, that's the reason. Now, it is also true that popularity in and of itself can be a good thing for the existence of astrology because it keeps the word circulating in the population, keeps the idea circulating in the population. But of course, you get 10 million people, you get 10 million different ideas of what astrology is.
Yeah. Got it.
So you're going to learn what astrology is only when you really have some clarity about your own life from an astrological perspective.
Gotcha.
It's your birthday, by the way. Oh, I'm supposed to guess, right?
I don't know. I mean, I'm
what, a little Gemini in there someplace?
No, I'm not Gemini. I'm not Gemini.
Your son, but...
You're talking about myself?
Yeah. Yeah, yourself.
No, I'm not Gemini.
I know, but I mean, you have some Gemini in you.
Oh, I mean, it could be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can share with you my birthday. It's September 29th, 1992.
September?
Yeah. 29th.
All right. So I'm getting Mercury. September 29. You're just crawling out of Virgo and into Libra.
Yes, exactly.
So, you use your charm to suck them in so that you can investigate them and see what's going on. So, yeah. It depends on what time you were born and a whole lot of other stuff, but
yeah, 11:30 p.m.
Oh, that late at night, right? Down in
areas. In Korea. So I don't know. That's the thing I don't understand.
You you have a different sky, but that's okay.
Yeah. So 11:30 in Seoul, Korea.
I think from what you just told me, it could likely really be a Gemini rising.
Gemini rising. Okay.
Yeah. So in your personal relationships, right? With what do you call chicks? You have to admit that the one thing you need in all of your relationships is freedom. Freedom to be trusted, not some rule that says you can't do this, you can't do that. But you could go to a party by yourself. Girlfriend has got a night out with the girls, and she's letting you go out with the guys, and she knows that you can be trusted to be faithful, loyal, because you got a Sagittarius 7th house of relationship. But the other part about it is that psychologically, you sort of have had to go through discovering that you're kind of upset about things that happened as you were growing up, family life, and it was not what the way you wanted it to be, and your sense of value for yourself, is really established by your family background, and so your fundamental basis in life is really trying to help people. Only reason you do the podcast is to bring people information that they might not get any other way.
So what is it about? Because we haven't met before, right? And obviously we didn't really share anything. We just said, this is the time of the podcast. So what, and we're virtual right now for people that are listening. So what was it, apart from what I just shared which was my birthday, that, gave you those types of information? Because okay. Yeah, you didn't even do a reading chart. It was just based on talking to me.
No, I can do it in my head. It's like 11:32. Think about midnight. Where's the sun at midnight? Down at the bottom of the earth, on the other side of the earth, the bottom, right? So that means that the sun was down near the midnight point. And since you're Libra, that means the top is Aries. And then I know that the next step would be Taurus and Gemini. And so it's either Gemini or Cancer rising. Cancer rising doesn't seem quite right because Cancer is more quiet, less prone to deep conversations with people they don't know.
Okay.
So you'll be quiet in a room with people that you don't know for a while.
Yeah. If
you're a Cancer rising. If you're Gemini, it's exciting to be in a room full of people talking. You just want to jump right in. So that means that the sun, that's the horizon of the earth, Gemini. And then it moves down, and Cancer comes up as your resource and saying, well, I have to go according to how I feel. Mm-hmm. My skill in life is feeling my way and feeling valuable. I have to feel valuable. You do. And if you do, then when it comes to communication, you can, Leo, really be in control of how you communicate and be really creative and so forth.
Is there, what I've heard also is that certain signs are compatible with other signs. So for example, with me as a Libra, let's talk about friendships and love relationships. Who are the, what's that?
Go ahead.
No. Who are the types of signs that me as a Libra, and we can go through other signs as well, that I should avoid, and the ones that I should gravitate towards? And maybe it's the same for friendships and relationships.
Well, again, you're talking about signs of the zodiac, and you're not talking about people.
Yeah, just in general. Obviously, this is not going to be 100% true.
But you see, the idea of and there are many astrologers that will do that for you.
Right. Am I just asking the wrong question then? Is this not the right?
No, it's not a right. It's not a matter of right or wrong question.
Okay.
It's what the state of the reality is. The reality is when, let's say, you're born and sun was in Libra, right? Mm-hmm. Sun was in Libra when you were born. Everybody was exposed to that sun in Libra. It's a collective energy. Everybody going to use it according to the nature of their state of consciousness while it's in Libra. So you can't just say this sign is comparable with that sign and then shove a couple of human beings of those signs in there, because the human beings could have taken that collective energy and use it in all kinds of different ways. So what is the real question is, should I be dating someone who is not conscious? Compatibility is based on consciousness. If a person is spiritually conscious of being a spirit on a human journey, instead of a human being lost trying to figure out, why am I here? What am I doing? The consciousness has to change in order for the compatibility to happen. You can put, let's say, an Aries together successfully with a Gemini with Leo with a Libra, and on it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the collective signs, the energy field. But when you put a person in that energy field, or as made of that energy field, their socio-cultural conditioning will play a role. You're born, because there's a need for you to be born. There's a need for you to not only be born, but the purpose of the birth is to fulfill the purpose of your birth, to fulfill yourself. The world needs that. That's why you were born. But you're born into a familial situation. And the family has this idea of the world and what it needs. And it wants to package you that way. It treats you that way. First 7 or 8 years of your life, the ego is a socially constructed thing based on familial socio-cultural realities imposed upon you. There you are, 0 to 7, big old little sponge, just it all comes into you. You don't say, no, cool, I'm good. No.
Yeah.
And so and you expect as a child that they're telling you the truth. And it is their truth, but it doesn't happen to be yours. So you made your rebellion in college.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about me specifically?
Well, that's when you discovered that there was a lot wrong with the educational system, and you felt like somehow or other you didn't belong there because you weren't learning what you wanted to learn. You wanted to learn who the hell you are.
Right. So I don't know. Now this is like, because I have an article, because I dropped out of university. So you got that right for sure. But there's articles around me online. So I don't know if this is something that was.
I never heard of you before.
That's right. So there's just no way, right?
I'm just going by, you said 1132.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what year was that again?
92. So that information about me dropping out or me not formulating within the square of the education system that's formed, that was based on the time. That's how you gather that data, is because I was born in 1130. Okay.
Yeah.
That's specific information.
Yeah.
Okay. But why?
Why was it about 1130 and the fact that I didn't like the education system? I don't get what has. Yeah. When you drop a chart for somebody, it starts with the moment of the first breath. And the circle itself is a 28-year clock. I can tell the nature of whatever it is that you might have been struggling with at age, 26 or 13 or 7 or 60.
But you can't know what I'm going to be struggling with when I'm in my 40s or 50s.
Yeah, I can.
You can. Okay.
Yeah, the externals may be
going to that.
Be different.
Yeah.
But the internal reality is you're struggling with what to do about things that you're confronted with at the moment. And you might, at a certain time, you might know exactly what you're doing. Other times you might not, because things are changing and you're trying to figure out how to handle this change. And are you good enough for this, or are you good enough for that? All of that is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everything in your life is potentially something that you can manifest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the amount of manifestation, amount of your potential that you can manifest depends on a number of different things, just like genetics are not the whole story. There's epigenetics.
Yeah.
So in astrology, there's a transits. There's a thing called progressions. And I can look, for instance, if you still want to do this.
I do. Yeah. I'm fascinated by this. No, as long as you have time, this is great.
I know, for instance, that the sun moves through the sky at essentially 1 degree a day.
1 degree a day. Okay.
So I know that this concept of progression is that I can look 19, what were you born?
92.
Yeah, 92. So you'll be 20 next year. 30, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm turning 29 and then I'll be 30.
Okay.
Next year.
So what you've experienced the last 3 or 4 years is, kind of the understanding that, boy, you've got a lot of improving to do. You came across what level of self-doubt that remains from your childhood. Because the first 28 years of your life, you're this spirit on a human journey. And your job is to investigate what is going on in this world. Wow, what a mess. Oh, God, okay, now I see what I got to do. So it takes 28 years for you to really be in the world, to absorb what it is telling you about what its reality is. And then you get to choose how you're going to spend 28 to 56, depending upon whether or not you
live that long,
are awakened enough.
Yeah, right.
Interested enough. You can remain asleep.
Yeah.
Which to you is just face down in the material life.
Mm.
But if you know that that's just your physical foot, your spiritual life uses this physical body to grow and have more experiences where its spiritual power can be brought to bear.
Mm-hmm.
And what's missing with humanity is its spiritual power. Humanity has been reduced to a series of slaves and slave owners. There's no spirituality in that whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's why we are where we are. And what we really need is a world council to which all nations become subservient to, in order to save the planet from becoming uninhabitable. Save humanity.
I agree with that. I completely agree with that.
Then go bang on your congressman's door. Get out in the street with your sign. The end is near.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's no longer a joke. The end is near. I'm looking at the cycles of Uranus. Uranus is a cycle of 84 years. It takes 84 years for 1 year on Uranus, one revolution. If you add 84 years to 1776, you get to 1860. And already it was getting ready for 1861, beginning of the Civil War.
Okay.
Uranus is about revolutionary change. So 1860, revolutionary change. Add 84 years to 1860, and you get 1944.
Why do we start at 1780 though? Like, what was the reason for
18.
starting at that 18?
I didn't start at 1780.
Oh, okay.
1776 plus 84
1776
is 1860.
Yeah.
That's the Civil War. You add another 84 years to 1860, where the Civil War was about to start, and you get 1944, the beginning of the end of the war. Second World War. And you add another 84 years to 1944, and you get 2028. And a revolutionary change is climate change. That's where we are. It's going to take that kind of revolution, the same kind of singular purpose that the Civil War was, the same kind of purpose as finally ending the war, and the same kind of purpose at surviving through climate change.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and how do you feel?
Yeah.
How do you feel astrology can help with that?
Well, I just thought that knowing that we're near the end of our tipping point, 2028. Past that, we haven't got a prayer.
2028.
We got to get it together. It's 2020. We got 7 years to get off our butts, get in the streets, and demand that the government put everything else aside and begin a global cooperation, a global Marshall Plan that everybody's going to have to sign treaties that, okay, this means I'm having to give up this much power, this much energy, this much. So militarily, I'm going to be weaker. I need a promise from you that you're not going to attack me. Now, everybody has to sign a non-aggression pact. Nobody's going to get aggression against anyone else. We're all going to work together. A global non-aggression pact. And the need for that is clear. But the fact that it's almost too late isn't so clear. And astrology can help clarify.
Right.
If you just look at the history, there's a book by Richard Tarnas, Tarnas. What is it called?
Have you ever done a reading on yourself? Like, how does that work?
I can't.
So you have to go to another astrologist to read you.
Well, you can't be objective about yourself.
Mm.
You could be sort of right, but it is not as confirming as it comes from the mirror. We ought to be mirrors of one another.
Yeah.
You come in the room and I say, oh, you have this big tattoo on your cheek. What is that? Oh, a piece of spaghetti. Okay, take it off.
Yeah. You
see what I mean? I mean, we need to be able to see and assist one another like that. When we human beings are animals with the so-called gift of self-awareness. Gorillas, monkeys, they help each other. You know, what should they do? They get together and they pick off flies and stuff in their fur and they clean their hairs off and they take care of. They care for each other.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. We don't.
Yeah.
When's the last time you went in and see a friend and they straightened out your shirt, combed your hair for you, and found a couple of something or other pieces of leaf in the back of your head? Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. Most of the time they'll say, oh, I don't know, I hope you don't mind, but you know, you got a little thing over there. And they're so reticent about it. They don't want to be personal. People don't want to be connected unless it's romantic.
Well, that's also a culture thing, right? It might be a difference. I'm here in Brazil. Someone just put sunscreen on my back I never met them. It might just be like a difference of culture. So are we talking specifically about the US or humans as a...
Well, I was talking about the difference between human self-awareness and the awareness that gorillas have of one another. They're not intellectually sophisticated. Why would they need that? For instance, there is I saw something on a Gaia film, interview with Joseph Chilton Pierce. And one of the things he talked about was a friend of his who he met more later in his life, who told him this story about having been raised in a forest. And not a real forest where, like in Brazil,
the Amazon,
where there's a whole civilization in the forest that don't need any of this other stuff, doesn't use it. And he lived in there. So somebody came to visit, and this particular group of people, forest people, in the center of their village, there was this huge, deep hole. And something very valuable was down there in some way. I don't know what it was. But it was a hole that, didn't have a guardrail or anything. It was just something they would go to and somehow or other do something with. And this guy who was visiting, an anthropologist, you want to learn about these people, he sees this toddler just walking really close to the edge of all that. And he freaks out. God, you save that kid, he's going to fall in a hole, blah, blah, blah. And so the leader of the group grabs him and says, hey, calm down. What's the problem? He said, that baby's in danger. He's going to fall into the hole. And the guy grabs him by the shoulder, shakes him up, and says, looks him right in the face, and he says, what makes you think that child wants to fall in a hole? We know, they say, that every human being is born with everything they need to survive. And they're not going to use anything to do the opposite. That's what people are. People know what to do. They were born with the wisdom to do it. That's a whole different view. So the guy is still freaking out. He finally stops. But the young man that we're talking about, that Joseph Chilton Pierce was talking about, had to leave at a certain point.
Okay.
And he gets into New York, gets off a plane, gets in the airport, he steps out, looks at all of this, and he says, he just collapses in a pool of tears. He just says this, oh my God, what we have lost. So astrology is about using what you have lost in your consciousness by astrologically presenting you with consciousness of it. And that's the whole purpose of astrology, is to increase a person's consciousness of who they are. The Dharma, if you want to be Hindu about it. The Dharma, the karma. The Dharma is your work, your duties and obligations as a human being to other human beings and to yourself. And all of that is completely wiped out, and all of our duties or obligations are to the corporations, which are not people at all. And now we're moving to a step further away to give away our spiritual power. We're going to send it off to artificial intelligence. Whatever we can't figure out, it can. So we're going to be led by artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly sure that I want to be led by artificial intelligence any more than I would like to be following the footsteps of Adolf Hitler.
Wow. It's a statement. Interesting. Why do you feel that way?
Why not?
I mean, don't you feel in some ways that people are going to seek out astrology even more, knowing that there's going to be such a divide of what AI? You don't think so? Okay.
No. I think we have a level of cultural consciousness which adds up to a massive amount of ignorance parading as knowledge. Yeah, it's knowledge. I know 1 and 1 is 2. Do I know who I am? No, but I know 1 and 1 is 2, so I can get a job as a mathematician.
Mm-hmm.
And all I care about is food.
And what other people think about
housing. And getting married, having kids, and being successful, progenitor. Successful in keeping the human race alive. While at the same time I'm doing that, I'm also contributing to climate change, trying to kill humanity. So we're in a box, and the only way out is to break out of the box. We can't live in this box. To be honest, there's a limit to how much growth the planet can sustain. The number of people are the number of mouths and stomachs, and that requires energy. The more people you need to feed, the more energy you need, and the energy you've been using produces carbon, which traps gas, methane, all those things.
Yeah.
So here we are, just completely unconscious. So do I think people will be turning to astrology as such in droves or anything like that? No, I don't. I would be great. It's wonderful, except that there are just too many unconscious astrologers out there.
Yes. And is it worrisome to you that I understand most astrologers don't do this for the money, but is it worrisome to you that there's TikTok and social media young astrologists that are coming out charging monthly fees and giving out advice? Do you feel like that's going to tarnish?
Well, I don't know. It depends on the advice. I didn't even know that was happening.
Apparently it's happening.
There are kids. Anybody under 40 is a kid to me. There are kids using TikTok to do astrology.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that they're giving more awareness to the idea of astrology, and that's certainly a benefit.
I agree. I agree. I think it's a good thing that people are talking the astrology talk, because it keeps the window open, the door open, the possibility that you could grow from that. Because it would be it'd be extremely materialist of me to say, oh, that's bad, don't do that kind of, You say, oh, I'm really happy that you're interested in astrology.
Yeah, that's what matters,
then
right?
They ask me questions and I tell them, and then it increases their knowledge of astrology in a way.
So the thing here is like the fascination for people that are interested in astrology. There's Instagram pages about it, TikTok pages about it. And the whole thing, the concept for people is based around what sign you are and what the commonalities of these signs represent of the person that you are. And it's almost these like inside jokes. Like if you're a Cancer or if you're an Aries, you're bold and aggressive, and there's inside jokes and memes that have to do with it. And the people that are of course Aries have an understanding that, oh, I can totally understand this. And that seems like the only thing and the main thing that is is really spreading the virality of astrology. So my first question is that the right way to look at astrology? And are there commonalities between each signs that are valid?
I don't know what you mean by the right way of looking at astrology.
Well, how do you as an astrologist look at that? Like when the only thing that people are really fascinated by is that if you're a Libra, that there's certain features, not necessarily about understanding the whole concept of astrology.
Look, I don't subscribe to the rights and the wrongs of anything as much as I do to understanding what it is that they're doing. Now, the external description that you're providing is what they're doing, the way they talk, so forth. But when you add all that up, they're trying to be unique. They're trying to figure out who and what they are. Right. And it's a socio-cultural reality that they're in. So they want to be popular. They want to fit. So they create these ways of interacting based upon Aries is really aggressive, this and that. Librans are manic. One day they're smiling, the next day they're ugly. You can't, even moment to moment sometimes. Or they'll say, Scorpio, ooh la la, all this nonsense. But it's not nonsense. It's the way that they are currently relating to it. So for me to look at it and say that's wrong would be to miss my chance to be there for them and say, well, yeah, Aries are aggressive, but do you know why? Well, no, just am. Okay, well, imagine you're a spark of fire. You're a little tiny coal just burning away. And you are that. You rose up out of an ocean of water that has no beginning and no end, Pisces. And you came up out of that. You better believe you get your ass moving. Because if you fall back in the water, you're dead. So Aries is always trying to get away from losing its flame and its power and its energy. So it has to learn to adapt to the world around it. Otherwise, it's going to be in a boxing match with it, maybe an atomic war with it. So on and on it goes like that.
So that's Aries. Yeah.
So it's really good that people are bantering about. It's really, in order for us to get what we need to get, it's important that you take and understand that the serious stuff isn't serious at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. I wanted to, number one, see if your perspective of how you feel about it, and maybe it is a good way to close it off of really giving people an idea from a professional perspective of what each of the signs, very briefly, around what are some of these commonalities and why, just like you just described with Aries. And we could go through the Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and so forth really quickly.
Well, okay. Taurus energy is very stubborn. Taurus wants, and we're talking about Taurus sun,
mm-hmm.
and it's going to be mitigated by the rest of the planets and all that. But it's pretty clear you can watch a Taurus, and once they start something, they're going to go to the bitter end. One way or the other, they're going to do it all the way. They don't do things halfway. They're very stubborn.
Hmm.
Gemini will argue, take the other side just to do that. Just to be in disagreement with you because they want to have you understand that they're smart too. And a Cancer is related to the whole concept of feeling. Feeling is something that is an organic thing. It's a physiological feeling as well, but it's the birth of feeling. So Cancers are pretty quiet generally. You can know a Cancer when you can't hear them. You talk like this. It's really hard to hear what they're talking. It's really, because they're all internal.
So does that mean they're very emotional?
Yeah, they live within their feeling, and they don't really like to express it loudly because they're very tender. Whereas Leo, on the other hand, wants to be in control, wants people to like them. The old joke about Leo is like, I've been talking about me for an hour now. I'm really, can you take over and talk about me, please? And if Virgo walks in the room and says, can I help? What can I do to help you? Or it goes to its girlfriends, if it's a woman, or the guys, somebody, Virgo says, geez, I don't think I can do this. I'm not good enough to do this.
So they lack confidence. They have issues with confidence, self-esteem. Okay.
But they're here to serve, and they want to serve, and they want to help, and they should. Libra, on the other hand, has to deal with their value in the basis of how you interact with other people. Your relationships begin to determine a collective sense of your value. So the whole business of sitting on a fence, it's a big leap to go from relationship to discovering deep secrets in yourself and in other person, let alone. So the idea of Libran relationships are all idealized. Everything is an ideal relationship where you don't do it, except that none of them are ideal.
So the perfectionists.
They're
picky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, see, with Libra, it's a little more complicated because it's ruled by. What time is it? I have.
Yeah, we're just finishing up.
We're reading in a half hour.
Yeah.
So, I got a little distracted there. So,
Libras.
The idea is that your Libran valuation is so often out of balance because they depend upon other people's opinion of them. Whereas a Leo doesn't depend on it; it demands love and recognition and appreciation. And for a Leo to create anything, it's a risk. Somebody could reject it; they could say "yay," or they could say "boo." The Scorpio comes along and says, "Well, I need to figure out and investigate where my relative strengths and weaknesses are." And so the idea with Scorpio can also be that one gets quite cynical about the world around it because the Scorpio can feel so vulnerable that they want to hide. And so they are very good at hiding. The Scorpio will be a certain percentage in a relationship, but the survivor part isn't in it. Survivor's watching how the relationship is going, see whether they should be in it or not. Sagittarius, on the other hand, is trying to figure out what is really going on here. What higher perspective could I achieve to help me understand things I couldn't understand without having this big overview? And the Capricorn idea is to be tough, to be able to withstand pressure, to use everything as an opportunity for growth. But at the same time, it also involves the necessity of being practical, doing what can be done as opposed to what ought to be done sometimes goes to what can be done, and it isn't what ought to be done. So the art of politics is engaged in Capricorn, because Capricorn has to do with structure of anything, society included. And Aquarius comes along and says to Capricorn, you're not fair. You're an autocrat. We're going to have a revolution. We're going to change this. We want things to be different. We want more democracy, less autocracy, or whatever it is that Aquarius is trying to do, is transform things. And that's all preparatory to running into the idea of Pisces, which has to do with the courage of being able to believe in yourself in a world that doesn't believe in you at all, because it believes that as the way things are at the moment. I mean, the astrology of 10,000 years ago, I don't think was very sophisticated. The astrology that existed with the Mayans, for instance. I mean, the Mayans had this idea that the sun rose from the bowels of the earth. Now, our smart scientists these days say, oh, Copernicus, this and all that. I'll tell you what, the orbit of the earth is the wave state of the earth. And a particle is, well, the earth. And it contains Venus, Mercury, and the sun. So when the sun comes up in the morning, it looks like it's coming right from the bowels of the earth.
Yeah.
But from an astrological perspective, it is. The center of the earth is where the sun and Mercury are, because the earth is its orbit. The earth is collected out of its orbit. So, yeah, I mean, it's the reason I brought it up is the way a person would deal with all these energies today, different than the way it was 120, 300, 400,000 years ago, because there were not the opportunities available. So the consciousness over time grows to the point where these things become available, these options, ways to be yourself, ways to develop parts of yourself that couldn't have developed. I mean, how could you have ever developed as an earbud wearer in 1500 BC?
Right.
But it's the same solar system. So it's all dependent upon the level of your consciousness. And I really agree that it's a good idea to have these people who are interested in astrology from some superficial level. They keep the idea alive on a general level. It's important. It's still circulating.
And I think what you just mentioned was useful in many ways. I mean, I kind of want to throw back to you and think about, from the people that you've guided and helped, how they've been able to apply certain knowledges that you just shared around the guiding principles and commonalities of each of these signs. A couple of things that I could think about are, if there is certain commonalities or tendencies for each of these signs, then, you know, for example, Taurus and Leos, the people that are just going to take a concept or an idea and take it all the way to the top. These are great entrepreneurs, right? These are probably the potential Elon Musks of the world, the people that are going to persevere through the ideas and the projects that they have. You mentioned a couple of other ones where people might be better served for maybe helping with climate change or politics. And there's like guiding principles around how to understand yourself, or maybe a future child that you want to have and what direction you want to take them based on these commonalities that you have, and also understanding other people. Apart from that, what are some of the things that you've seen for people to take these commonalities based on their birth month or date? And what are some of the applicable things that they can use that can benefit their lives, if that's the right way to think about it or not?
Well, there's a lot. You have to unpack that a little bit for me.
Please. Yeah.
At the end of the question, you said something about that, referring to everything you had just said, which was not just that. There was rich with various details of one kind or another related. I got lost in understanding.
Yeah. The main question is, based on what you've just shared about the commonalities of these signs, how can people best use this information that can be applied for the benefit of their lives?
Well, the caveat is this is what you call sun sign astrology, and it only refers to the basic fundamental will, consciousness of that person. The rest of the solar system, planets, the organs, how that consciousness will operate. So the general commonalities, I wouldn't put Taurus and Leo together. It's too much.
Okay. That's very specific. Okay. Just because they're so alpha, they're so, yeah.
Because they're square.
Yes.
They're going to try to reconstruct each other.
Okay.
The Taurus is not going to be happy with the Leo popping off. How can you say that? We need to really build this quietly. And the Leo is going to say, come on, man, you're slow. Tauruses have a reputation of being slow because everybody else moves faster. Does that mean they're slow? No, it means they have their own pace, and that's what they follow. And their nature is to do that.
What about Libras? Who are Libras not compatible with?
Not compatible with?
Yeah.
Well, if you're conscious, you can be compatible with anybody else who you agree is conscious as well. I mean, conscious means being aware of your energies, various energies, and what you can do with them, and what would be the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. That's consciousness. So for you, to me, it's a matter of being able to feel in a harmonious kind of presence with another person. If you don't feel disturbed, if your equilibrium is not upset, chances are you have decent capability, decent relationship with that person. But Libra and Sagittarius, they pretty much get along fairly well. Sagittarius is very adventurous, and Libra likes to dance. Libra likes music. Libra likes, socializing. So does Sagittarius. So there's a commonality there. But a Libra and a Capricorn, not so much. Not necessarily universal.
For sure, yeah.
Not all Capricorns, but the basic energy is square, Libra. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, square. So the kind of relationship between those two energies is reconstructionist. There's a crisis that needs to be addressed so that the values can be reoriented. And, Libra is not necessarily wildly interested in reorienting your values. They're fine-tuned right now to stay balanced. And a Capricorn might want you to reorient yourself. So
could that mean in general, the people with the same signs are likely going to be, in general, fairly compatible? A Libra and a Libra, a Virgo and a Virgo.
A Libra and a Libra will be compatible to the point of boredom.
It'd just be
Everything's the
bored.
same.
Okay.
There's nothing new.
Yeah, it's true. I'm just trying to think of all the Libras that I know right now. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can hang out and share a lot or whatever, but the same bed, the same breakfast table, day after day after day, with nothing new. Probably.
You're saying it's not just Libras, but it could be a Virgo and a Virgo, a Cancer and a Cancer, a Gemini and a Gemini, anyone that has the same sign, not universally again, but in general, you're saying.
Yeah. The general excitement of anything new, progress, even some new idea, some new part of me is been awakened by what you said, and I'm so happy to be here, Virgo to Virgo. No, they're going to pick each other apart. Virgo is very analytical. Virgo is always, give them a thread, they'll split it into two, and give those two, they'll split that into two, and each one of those will split into two. They're detail oriented, and they make great writers because of that capacity for detail. They can set a scene. They can, talk about somebody's hallway, and the next thing you know, it's a museum. It's just filled with all kinds of things you never noticed before. Virgo will really show it to you.
Isn't it human nature, though, that we're attracted to likes, and that we can often appreciate the people that are like us?
Well, tribally
rather than different.
Yeah. That's why human beings hang out with each other instead of, I don't know, with some giraffes. You hang around giraffes very often.
Not yet.
Most of the organisms, the living organisms that you hang around with, for the most part, all your life, have been humans, right?
Yeah. Because
that's the nature of being human. You hang out with humans. But here and there, you discover, like Jane Goodall, discover gorillas are kind, wonderful, beautiful creatures who are just filled with nothing but love and agape, unconditional love. Once they see you're not a threat, man, they bring it all to you. Coco, remember? Coco and Robin Williams telling jokes, laughing together. Mr. Rogers was there. Came into Coco's neighborhood. They hit it off really well.
Sure.
Coco's got a little kitten. Coco's passed away now. She died at 53. So anyway, it's human nature to hang out with like, but when it comes to the signs, that's collective energy that's being used in a particular way. So that kind of stuff is more for security, feeling like you belong. I'm going to find somebody just like me, so therefore I know I belong.
But not good for life partners.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Okay.
It works. You can make it work. And sometimes it works better than anything else. But that's rare because the configuration of the astrological planets is where the differences start to matter.
Well, Ray, I know you've been so generous with your time, and I really, really appreciate your time, your knowledge, your insights around all of these things that I just didn't really understand. And I don't know if I asked you the right questions around this. So my final question to you is, what is a question that you wish someone would have asked you, or something that I should have asked, but perhaps there was a knowledge gap there?
A question you should have asked?
Yeah. What's a question that you wish you would have liked to have been asked based on your profession?
Well, I mean, based on my profession, whatever question you ask is the one you should ask. There's a few you didn't ask, I'm sure, but it doesn't mean that the ones you asked are not the ones you should have asked.
I get that, but what would have been, you think, more useful for the audience that is listening that should have been asked? That would have been more helpful to if I asked.
Well, I don't know how to formulate that kind of question, but it boils down to a question that would be based upon the internal angst over who am I? What does astrology have to say about who I am? That's a good question. That's a reason for getting an astrological chart done or read. You can do up the chart and look at it for a century and it doesn't tell you anything if you don't know how to read it. Right? So yeah, what does astrology have to do with who I am?
Got it. And how would you answer that in a short sentence?
Okay. Thanks for taking the time with me to do this. I don't know if it's going to be of any great use, but there's got to be something in there that's worthwhile, right?
I'm sure there is.
For nothing.
That's right. That's right. No, this is very useful, Ray. I really appreciate your time. Where can people find you, learn more about you? Where is the online presence for you?
Where you can go is to my website, which is everybody knows the 3 W's. So what, where, why, and who. www. What, where, why, and who. Astrological perspectives. Net. I couldn't get com way back. I would have had to pay $1,000 for it. So that's the easiest and best way.
We'll link that.
Look, if you're looking for a reading or something like that, I don't want to disappoint you, but as it is, I am fully booked through the rest of the year.
Congrats.
I haven't got a spot open. They get open now and then for, somebody cancels or somehow run doesn't show up or whatever, get openings like that. So I do, if you do go to the website and provide an accurate birth time, date and place of birth, I'll put you on a wait list, which I'm going to start filling out, calling people or writing to them, probably around Thanksgiving, November-ish, about January readings. Because
cool.
I'm going to be teaching a class with another person come September. So if you can also go to YouTube. And YouTube, I do a monthly reading of the month, what the month is like. And so that's one way, because that gets you on my mailing list and you'll get that every single month.
Perfect. Well, we'll link all of that in for people to check out. Ray, thanks so much for your time. Again, this has been super useful. I really enjoyed this conversation and definitely recommend people to check this out.
All right.